Okay, welcome to this LPO online question and answer session. We are here to talk about all things touring and to answer your questions. This topic was suggested by Mark, who is a friend of the orchestra. And if there are any other topics you'd like us to hear us talk about, please let us know in the comments below. Okay, so we're going to start off by introducing ourselves. We're going to look at who we are, what we do, how long we've been with the LPO in our various roles, how many tours we've done, and maybe if we can think of a favourite tour moment each, that will be a good start. So shall we start with, let's start with Alice.
Well, hello. My name's Alice, and I am second oboe in the London Philharmonic Orchestra. I started officially with the LPO in January 2015, which was straight into a tour. Actually, it was the Verdi Requiem tour with Vladimir. I think I was trying to think of my favourite tour. There's so many. We have such a brilliant time on tour. It's difficult to. I think I've got two favourite ones. I'll be quick, if that's all right. The first one is a bit of a comedy one, which was when we went to Cologne and there was a business conference going on. So we couldn't stay in Cologne, so we had to stay outside of Cologne in Fantasia Land, which was a theme park which was closed. So we had the Hotel Matamba all to ourselves, which was jungle themed with an adventure playground for the lift, and the rooms were themed in tents. I had breakfast with Santiago in a mud hut the next morning. I mean, it was brilliant. I loved it.
Oh, I missed that tour.
It's brilliant.
Typical. I wasn't on it.
Place to ourselves. Um, but my second favourite one was quite recently, actually. It was in Dresden, and Ben Mellifont had just joined, and we were complete. The wind section was complete for the first time in years, decades, and all of us went out for a meal in the evening, the whole wind section, and that is like the ages span decades between the youngest and the oldest. I won't say which one's which, and it was just so lovely to have everyone there, and the fact we can all go out and socialise and have a nice meal together was brilliant.
Great, thank you, Alice. What about you, Grace?
Well, I'm Grace. I'm the tours manager. So just to give a bit of background, that means I actually am involved from the very beginning of planning the tours until the very end. So I actually go on the tours, and I'm sort of the responsible person on tour. And I've been with the orchestra since February last year, February 2019. And literally 10 days after I joined, I went on my first tour. So that was a bit of a baptism of fire. But yeah, no, it's been great. I couldn't think of one favorite moment. So I just wanted to kind of just put it as like a blanket thing of it's just that like when we go out for like a nice drink or a meal after the concert and everyone's like relaxed, and we sort of kind of have that feeling of, oh, we've done it again. That's my favorite moment, really.
Great. Rachel?
Oh, well, I'm Rachel. I am the harpist in the orchestra, and I'm married to him.
Wait, hang on, wait.
And I've been in the orchestra for 31 years, which I find absolutely ridiculous. I can't imagine where the years have gone. What was the question? Favourite tours?
How many tours have you done?
No idea.
And what your favourite moment is?
Well, loads and loads of tours. Gosh, I honestly can't remember. And there are so many moments. I can't. It's difficult to crystallise anything in particular, but I just think we're so lucky to have had a window on the world and seen so many countries and capital cities that, we're just so lucky, aren't we, to have done that. There's a lot. Basically we are there to work. On a long tour, you do get the odd day off, and if you can capitalise on being, say, in Tokyo or Sydney or something, you have the most wonderful time. And I remember Andrew and I had a day off in Tokyo quite recently, and we had. I really wanted to get into the real Japan, away from the city, because obviously most of our work, all of our work, is city-based, but it's got to be. So we, January tours, we went upstate, we got buses, trains, all sorts, and went up into the mountains outside Japan outside Tokyo, to a ryokan, which is a traditional house in the mountains with springs and saunas and hot baths and whatnot. And had the most wonderful banquet there and stayed overnight and wore kimonos and tatami mats and everything. It was just a fantastic experience, which we could never have had any other way. And that's wonderful. I think the only other moment that really sticks out in my mind is when we went to South Africa for the first time, and we were being feted, because of the fact that we were the first orchestra to go for so many years. And we rolled up at Durban Airport, and we had the city band playing on the tarmac. Very serious, this is a good, proper moment. And unintentionally, I completely upstaged them by dancing with Eugene Skeef down the stairs from the aeroplane and out over to the terminal. And I think they were probably a bit cheesed off, but we had great fun.
Yeah, more than. So, thank you, Rachel. Simon?
Hi, yes, I'm Simon. I'm the contrabassoonist in the LPO. I think I tried to work it out on my abacus. I think it's 19 years in October, I think, that I've been a member, which, as Rachel said, it's a sort of shocking number. So big 2-0 next year. I also tried to work out how many tours I've done. All I can say is I think it's well over 100.
It must be, because I actually went through some of my photos, and in the 5 years I've been, I got to 42, and that's only. So I don't
Wow.
God, wow.
But, I mean, I know this is slightly going off on a tangent, but I mean, a tour to us can be a day in Paris, for example.
Yeah.
It can also be a
smash and grab, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be a mixture of everything. So, Eastbourne, sometimes it feels like a tour. But yeah, so I think, I mean, it's well over 100. I tried to work out roughly how many I would do in a year, and I thought it would be between half a dozen and 10 maybe. But so do the maths, and then it's too many. But that we can get onto, whether it's a 2-week tour or 1-day tour. It's a tour. Favourite moments, I think, probably going on from Rachel's dancing. I mean, I've got 1,000,001 favourite moments on tour.
I remember dancing with you in a hotel in Zagreb and going completely bonkers. Probably,
Rachel, yeah. Probably with your husband as well. And
no, he wasn't there.
There's not many people I haven't danced with on tour, but no, the priceless one with our soon-to-be leaving chief executive, Tim Walker, was one of the best moments. Advised by Greg Wormsley, one of our cellists. I didn't hear the words myself, but I think it was Freiburg or Friedrichshafen or something like that. And again, it was post-concert, post-hours of travel. The adrenaline was probably still going, and it was one of those occasions where the entire orchestra was in the hotel bar. And we were joined in that bar by the Irish dancing lot, the Lord of the Dance.
Riverdance.
River, thank you. Riverdance. So they're all in the corner. They were doing a tour, and it became apparent that that's who they were, and it was like, oh wow, So they got up and left probably when we arrived. Anyway, so I started doing diddly 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 diddly, and Tim Walker was quite new to the orchestra at that point and said, "Oh look, one of them's doing it." I thank you.
Bravo, Simon.
But yeah, that's goes down as a good memory for me. That, yeah.
You must have been really good then.
Well, I have my dancing moments. Yeah.
Another great moment that I miss. I don't think I don't ever remember that.
I know. Well, I think it was probably in the days before mobile phones captured everything.
Ah, thank
You
God.
know, well, you can't, yeah, exactly. You can't get away with
Brilliant
anything these
times.
days. Yeah, you've got to be careful these days.
So, Andrew, are you going to answer your question?
Yes, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Andrew Chenery. I'm the orchestra personnel manager,
Married to her.
married to Rachel. We actually decided that we'd do this Zoom chat or this question and answer thing on separate computers, because sharing a screen with Rachel is, I always lose out. So, but just to prove that we are in the same house.
Oh, I've got to pack her up.
Oh, well, hello.
Oh, oh,
Oh,
oh,
oh,
oh, oh.
oh.
What goes on Zoom stays on Zoom. And how? Don't we know it?
Yeah, back out to the doghouse, Andrew.
Yeah.
So yes, and I've been in the orchestra. I've been in the orchestra twice. I joined the orchestra in 1992, and I was with the LPO until 1999. And then I went to another London orchestra that we don't really want to mention, maybe. And I came back in 2007, and I've been here ever since. So in total, that's 20 years. So like Simon, I think I'm into the hundreds of tours for sure. I mean, we must do at least 5 or 6 a year, and as many as 10 sometimes. So yeah, lots and lots of traveling. So we get to know the airports, and we get to know a lot of cities quite well. And favourite moments, well, I get quite excited about some of the fantastic concert halls we get to play in, and memorable concerts in places like Carnegie Hall or Suntory Hall in Tokyo. I remember going and thinking that the Harper Hall in Iceland, in Reykjavik, was stunning. And like Grace, it's after those fantastic concerts you get to briefly experience some of the local culture by going to a local restaurant, and that's the really enjoyable thing for me. Really enjoyable thing, apart from having my wife on tour sometimes. So after this, let's just open up a sort of free discussion about what it's like behind the scenes on tour, what goes into getting the orchestra on tour, and what tour life is like, and things that people don't realise that we have to do that are a little bit sort of maybe not quite so obvious. So maybe Grace can start with getting the orchestra on tour and the process of how that all happens, because it happens a long way in advance, doesn't it, sometimes?
Yeah, and I mean, especially if the destinations are kind of further afield, Asia, US, those do tend to kind of be in the diary for a really long time, sort of 3 years. Sometimes you get some last minute query, but I mean, by last minute, we mean like a year and a half. That's quite last minute for a far field trip. For European trips, we have kind of a lot of regular partners that we work with in Europe, and just because obviously the logistics are slightly easier, it tends to be kind of more like 2 years in planning rather than kind of 3 years. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to bore everyone with the planning part, because it's a lot of discussions, it's a lot of to and fro between which venues are actually interested, which what program can we take, which conductor can we bring. There's so many different factors to go into it. I mean, I think one of the questions I get most is like, how do we choose to go on, like, to which cities? I mean, I think, to be honest, we don't really get to choose. Fortunately, the orchestra has such prestige and reputation that we do get invited to a lot of places, and then it's a matter of what can we actually make work practically, along with our London and Glyndebourne schedule as well, because even though I think in an ideal scenario, of course, we'd like to do 3-week US tours and how many ever long Asia tours, but we still have to be back in London as well, and there's a lot of kind of lots of jigsaw to fit in to getting the orchestra actually finally on the road. Yeah.
Now is now a good time to mention visas, Grace.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's maybe something people don't really realise goes on.
Yeah, I wondered whether we should talk about visas because it's.
Oh yeah, people need to know about visas.
I've suffered at the hand of visas.
We all have. We all have.
Yeah.
Well, you've been banned from the US, haven't you?
I have. Well,
Well, we think
You've done
country might be slightly
I
blacklisted.
don't understand. I'm a good boy normally. Anyway,
Yeah, I think you've just been to the US too many times. That's what it is.
probably. Yeah.
Yes, so visas. I mean, obviously, when a British national usually goes to places like Korea or the US, you don't necessarily need a visa. But we are there to work, so therefore we need a visa to prove that we can actually work in these countries. Sometimes it can be quite straightforward. Like I think the Korean and Japanese are pretty straightforward. Then we come to the Chinese and Russian and US visas, which are, as you can see from everybody's faces, it's a whole another thing.
They age me, Grace. Honestly, I used to, I'm only 20, but
Yes.
I mean, most people have got 2 passports these days, haven't they? Just to make things a bit
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, it's like we have to have 2 passports and sometimes even one for our instruments as well. So
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's
Yeah.
Russia, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the US.
taking photos of your instrument against a white wall, and when my partner is a double bass player, finding a white wall that's that big and that you can take a photo of a double bass, probably the same with a harp, isn't it?
Well, I had great difficulty trying to find a suitable photograph of my bow. That was challenging.
Yeah, you're a string instrument. You've got to have a bow.
Of course.
Is this a good time to mention whenever I go on a flight and I have to take my contra?
Yeah, I think it's a great time to talk about it.
Well, that's all
Well,
logistics.
the time scale often, if we, for example, sticks out as a good one for me is whenever we do a festival hall concert on, say, the Friday night, and then we've got Madrid the following day. There's not enough time for the truck to take the instruments down there, so we have to take second instruments or your only instrument. So I have to take my contra on the flight. I think there might be some photos that are going to magically appear at some point to sort of show this. So I've often had, a fascinating flight with my contra. No, it doesn't get meals or drinks, which I think is something that needs to be addressed. And it also goes on as a cello, which is a really weird one.
Yeah, no. So we tried to explain to the airlines that this is actually not a cello, so so it's not actually going to look like a cello. But quite often they're just so used to having cello seats, but not anything else. So they get really confused and freaked out by what are you actually bringing on the flight? So it's just easier to say it's a cello. It's a cello.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I've had everything from, do you know what you're doing? Yeah, fine, great. Off you go, because you have to get the extender strap.
Yeah.
Tied in and whatever. It also has to go by the window every time, obviously. But I've had the pilot come down and see, because he wants to make sure that it's safe.
It reminds me of it's a nightmare travelling with a harp as a freelancer. And I remember many years ago when I was young, I was travelling around France doing chamber music concerts, and we got to Lyon, and many phone calls had been put through, and yes, it'll all be fine. And I saw my harp come up with the suitcases on the baggage carousels, and that was literally a heart-stopping moment. I saw it come up and tumble over and smash down and I thought, maybe it's time I joined a symphony orchestra. Because obviously we've got this fantastic team of people I've got 2 harps. One of generally speaking, it's handled on my behalf, which is just fantastic. I can use the train, which is very exciting if you're a harpist, instead of having to drive everywhere with your instrument. And we've got a wonderful on-the-road team. We've all got boxes. We've got in a massive van 3 or 4 people who move the gear, set it up. and they know how to talk to the people on the airside at airports, and they're there for the loading and the unloading. And so really, I can just renounce all responsibility, and that is fantastic.
Maybe I should just explain what the On the Road team consists of. We have a stage and transport team of 3 people, which is Damien Davis, Laura Kitson and Stephen O'Flaherty. They look after the transport of the instrument and the stage setting in each venue we go to. We have 2 librarians who share a job, both called Sarah Thomas and Sarah Holmes. And then in the personnel department, there's me and my wonderful assistant or coordinator who works alongside me, called Hannah Verkerk. And we normally will take up to the 3 stage and transport managers on tour, one of the personnel managers and one of the librarians, and we all help each other out on the road. So it's an interchangeable group of people, and they are invaluable to help a tour run smoothly, along with Grace as tour manager who goes on every tour. So as Simon says, if things in the schedule works out well, then we'll do a concert in London. Those instruments will then be taken to where we're playing abroad, and they'll come home again for the next time we work. But more often than not, that isn't the case, and distances mean that we have to have second instruments, or people have to carry their instruments on planes. So it can get quite convoluted. And we've had 2 trucks away on tour because we've been going between venues where the truck can't get while it's away from one to the other. So it does get very convoluting. And
I once went on the truck back from Holland, I think it was somewhere. I just said to Ken, our former driver, I really fancy coming on the truck. And he said, "Oh, I'll get you 7 o'clock tomorrow morning." So I did. I went back with him on the truck, and it's astounding what, that's just a short journey. It was absolutely incredible what he does, and clockwork sort of, organised.
People seem to think that we have these things called day offs before you go away on tour. This is often not the case. We do a festival hall concert. We will have been up early doing a rehearsal with microphones on, resting during the afternoon if you're lucky, doing a concert, often with microphones on, sometimes with patching afterwards. And then we have a check-in at horrid o'clock the next day.
And you're greeted by me.
And you fly out, and you do you get to the airport, you get to the you get to the other, you fly, you get to the other place, you get off, you get the coach, you get to the hotel, and if you're really lucky, you might have a room that's ready. You might have time to get some food. You will certainly have a rehearsal sooner than you want it, and then you will have a concert when you've got to switch it on and be fresh as a daisy.
Yeah.
So that's why we all talk about it was great to get to the end of the day where we could have a chance to relax.
I think it's a common myth that it's a holiday, isn't it? When we're lucky enough to get a day off in the middle of a 2-week tour, that day off is, more often than not, it's not something where you're like, "Way, let's go tourist, I'm going to sleep."
I was just going to say about the flying out on the day. I'm not sure people realise that we often travel on the day, and the time margins are so small to make sure we get there on time to get to the rehearsal, even the concert. I think it might have been an internal flight actually, but the pilot, talking about pilots, Rachel, was so excited that he had the LPO on board that he opened the cockpit, slowed the plane down so that we could queue up and have pictures with him. But we were all sort of like, but we've got to get to the weirdest moment on a flight when you're thinking, we just need to get to work. Well, I've got a good picture. So
there's been some horrible near disasters with travel, hasn't there, over the years? I mean, I remember one quite a long time ago now, where there was a plane hijacking which ended up landing at Stansted Airport, which was the airport the orchestra was travelling out of that morning. And they closed Stansted. You couldn't leave Stansted because there was an aeroplane on the tarmac which was part of a hijack. And we were in international news, So we had to bus from Stansted down to Gatwick, charter an aircraft at hours' notice, get to northern Italy, and eventually bus across northern Italy to where we were playing. And we eventually arrived for the second half of the concert. And the soloist, who was Andreas Schiff, had to play solo piano music for the first half of the concert.
Wow.
We turned up and did a symphony in the second half. And then we went out and had a beer, you know. That's the important thing.
I remember Glyndebourne when we went over to Baden-Baden to do...
Oh, yeah, another one, yeah.
Where I can't remember the details. I was racking my brains last night about it. But basically, we ended up turning up sort of after the start of the show. And we kept going out, didn't we? We kept flying back, doing concerts.
It wasn't just any old opera, it was Tristan and Isolde.
Yeah. It was crazy, but
And didn't we go about 4 times or something?
Yeah. But
I mean, the schedule was unbelievable.
But we did the first act in normal clothes, you know, and then we got changed and said, da-da, you know, for act 2, because we were late and there was nothing we could do about it, you know. When we came back from America that time, when one flight got out. Yeah. So here's the glamour, ladies and gentlemen. So we got stuck at the airport, JFK, wasn't it? I think.
Yes. In the departure lounge.
24 hours, wasn't it, or something?
Yes.
So they gave us a voucher for food, but nothing was open except McDonald's. And I remember an image in my mind of touring glamour was, I won't name any names, but they possibly played trumpets and trombones. Went to McDonald's with their vouchers and spent every single dollar that they possibly could, and had this mountain of McDonald's.
Talking of glamour on tour, I think it's worth pointing out that there is absolutely nothing glamorous about a symphony orchestra arriving at a hotel for check-in.
Oh, that's when Grace is extremely busy.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, we obviously try to warn the hotel months in advance that...
Warn the hotel?
Yeah. Well, no, you know, that we will be turning up, you know, slightly earlier than their check-in time, and we're going to be extremely busy. So please, you know, lay out the keys in alphabetical order as soon as possible. Just have... you know, and just give us as many rooms as possible whenever it's ready. And, you know, sometimes it's beautiful. We go and it's just all laid out and everything's absolutely fine. Quite a lot of the times we only have about, you know, 50% ready, and then it's all in completely like random order, so we don't even know whose rooms are ready. And then I'm just standing there going, I think I've got January, you know, that sort of thing, just calling out, you know, room by room. It's hectic. I mean, I don't even think about, like, you know, as the tour manager, I don't think about checking into the hotel until about 2 hours after, you know, we get to the hotel, really. Yeah.
Can I ask everyone if they've got a particular country they really enjoy touring, or a particular city that they really enjoy going to? Simon?
San Sebastian.
Oh.
Picturesque, beautiful.
Oh.
You know, you come out of the concert, we've talked about, we're just going to go and have some amazing food, and it's just stunning. I love that place.
Food's quite important to you, isn't it, Alice? Because as a vegetarian, you've got to look after choice of restaurants quite often, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been vegetarian all my life, so it's tricky. And places like Japan, China, Spain,
don't they?
Tricky. But there's ways to work it out, and there's a brilliant app called Happy Cow which really helps. But it's amazing when you're in places where certain foods are a bit interesting, that suddenly there's lots of people that suddenly want to be vegan and vegetarian with me. I'm much better than I used to be at finding things, and it's difficult sometimes, but it's so much easier. Every year it gets easier.
I think eating, it becomes quite important, because obviously you need to eat, and it's difficult when you're travelling. Eating, if you're a musician, is quite important, because you've got to work out what your energy level is going to be like for the concert. And I mean, I can't wait until after a concert and eat a large meal. It doesn't suit me. But sometimes there isn't time to eat much before then either. So you can become quite fixated on how you're going to manage your you're how are you going to do it?
Strategy, isn't it? Sometimes it's a strategy. When am I going to get this? When am I going to eat this? I've
Yeah,
always got an emergency sandwich. Sometimes
yeah,
I think when you add in jet lag to all of that as well.
yeah. It can
Yeah.
really be tricky. Yeah.
I think in eating is important, especially when we go abroad, because as we're all saying, we're really busy. Getting to rehearsals, traveling. That is sort of like the one way to experience the culture of the country we're going to. That's kind of the one easily accessible thing we can do. Because quite often we'll go to places and we don't even get to see the city centre, or the big famous square or anything like that. It's not that glamorous a lot of the time. So it's just nice to experience that local culture through food.
Yes, agreed.
I think the other thing that's nice about touring is the opportunity to return to places repeatedly. And you can go back to a place, not for, you think, right, okay, so I know I haven't got to do the initial recce. You can really, really get to know a city. And I think that's a real privilege
I
because.
feel very strongly about that in particular with New York, because it is a place that we've been to. I mean, I must have been about 10 times or something now, but it's
Yeah.
a place that generally we talk about days off that we don't get, and we've worked really hard. New York is one place, for some reason, we quite often do get time. And
We often stay there and get bussed out to places, don't we?
Yeah.
Do we do some of these questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, quite a bit of some of it we've been
touched on a lot of it.
General chat. So let's have a little look. How are the tours funded, Grace? Can you maybe give us a thought on that one?
Yeah. Well, we touched on just now, as Andrew said, we don't really make money off the tours, but we all always aim to make break even. So quite often we are just relying on the flat fee from promoters, and there's always a bit of negotiation going on, etc. And of course, the more venues we go to in one tour, kind of the cheaper it works out per concert. So those sort of tours do quite well for the promoter and for us as well. I think sometimes we do have to bring in some external sponsorship, especially for places like US and Asia, where just the moving of just the instruments getting out to all these places, getting the cargo, the freight, is very expensive. So we have to get some extra help because not all promoters can pay that. But quite often we also have the promoters or the venues themselves have sponsorships to be able to pay us. So there's a lot of kind of different ways of doing things. We don't usually get involved with box office deals because then that's quite a lot of responsibility for the orchestra, and also the venues themselves know much better like what their local kind of local people want and how to promote that. But yeah.
Well done. One of the questions we've got here is: are the players required to tour, or can they opt out? So I suppose as personnel manager, I should probably pile in with that one. Most of our tours are with our titled conductors, our principal conductor or our principal guest conductor. So Vladimir Yurovsky or Ed Gardner in the future, or Yannick Nezet-Segan in the past as principal guest conductors, Karina Kandelakis in the future. And the players are required to prioritize that work with the orchestra. So most people do the touring because it's seen as part of their jobs at the orchestra. We're quite flexible with young families, people with small children that feel they can't always be away from home. And maybe we could actually talk about what that's like. I don't know whether Rachel, Simon, you might want to talk about when the kids in your families were very young. And how it was leaving them.
Well, I mean, I suppose I suppose I've been lucky in that respect, because being a harpist, I'm not on every tour. And I remember that when our kids were little, I think, was Kurt Mazur the chief conductor at that stage, or was he doing a lot of work with us? And he was doing so much classical repertoire that often I wasn't required. But it's challenging. It's challenging. I was, well, we were very, very lucky. My mother was around to help. We had au pairs, but I never ever went away without a mother, my mother or your mother being there as well. I used to find it very, very difficult to leave the kids. I guess I did because I felt I had to play the harp. Do I regret it? No, not at all. Has it harmed the children? No, not at all. And later on, they came with us, and they understand this crazy life we lead. And it's been fine. But obviously, if you have got a very difficult situation at home, it's not always children. It can be a very complicated family situation. It can be immensely distressing to be away at that time. How do you feel about it, Simon?
Yeah, I think it's very, very difficult. I mean, I really feel for young mums, I have to say. It is very difficult. I mean, a Skype back in the day phone call home when you're 10 hours ahead and you've got to set an alarm for whatever time, or make sure you're in at whatever time, and you sort of, it's really, really tough, because you want to engage with them, but they're so young that they don't understand it. You don't really have a conversation. What you want to do is hold them and give them a hug. Even when they're 16, 17, But yeah, I mean, it's tricky. Well, the only pressure I've got at the moment is that Lizzie is absolutely, if I don't take her to New York at some point.
Oh, we've never been forgiven.
It hasn't happened yet.
I think I'm going to just wait for her to be old enough to be able to go and enjoy a little tipple, so we, take the fun side out of it when she's younger. It's, come and see what it's really like.
We've got another question here. Do the orchestra eat together when they're on tour, or do they receive an allowance? And are they able to practice in the hotel? So we do receive an allowance, don't we, Grace?
Yeah. So everyone gets, and that's including the staff, everyone gets a certain amount of per diems per day. And we trust the players because they're all adults. We just give everyone the envelope at the beginning, and how they spend it is up to them. Because, I know some people do go through them a lot at the very beginning. But yeah, so it's totally up to them how they want to use the money for lunches, dinners. Generally speaking, when we go on tours, we get breakfast in hotels. That's definitely a nice plus. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add that to my favourite tour moment, just being able to have breakfast in the hotel. I'll never get over it. I just like having breakfast cooked for me. So yeah, that's a nice start to the day.
Sometimes sorry, just going in on the breakfast. Sometimes that's tricky when we're leaving at say 8:30, and then the whole orchestra goes into a breakfast restaurant that is not big enough for the whole orchestra, and we have to leave in minutes, and people are queuing up for the scrambled egg, and it's just a total bun time.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes we have group meals. Sometimes at venues. And it's always a bit nice when we can actually have joint things together. And then sometimes we have like receptions and parties as well.
Maybe we should talk about receptions and parties.
Yeah, well, just sometimes it just really depends, because obviously catering for a symphony orchestra is quite expensive, so it's always like a nice plus. Bit of finger food or like a champagne, this kind of reception. Sometimes we get full like buffet catered, which is just luxurious, because it just means like as people we've been saying, eating is really important. And if it's already there for you, then that just makes quite a lot of difference to the day, to everyone, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've organised over the years some good Christmas parties, haven't we? There's one particular venue in Stuttgart which seems to have become an annual event where we all dress up.
If we're there, we go there. Yeah,
We're there, we go there, and it's always nice because we invite the soloists and conductors, and they're very good. They take part, don't they?
It's fancy dress.
Sorry.
Fancy dress, and people really go for it, don't they, Simon?
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. So I probably now need to explain this. Yeah, we tend to have a sort of, it's just normally Christmas themed. Obviously, if it's Christmas, if it's another time of year that we just think we'll have a party, it'll be themed in some way. But the Christmas parties are pretty epic when we are in this particular bar in Stuttgart, which we'll do a massive shout out. They're absolutely brilliant. The last one we went to, they had a sort of a picture of the orchestra, and we had
they had a board that we all signed the previous year, I think it was.
But yeah, so the first things that went in my suitcase for that tour, you're thinking tails for the concerts and wash kit and whatever. No, it wasn't that. It was an unmade up cardboard box, some sellotape and some scissors, and some brick wallpaper. So I found myself on the morning of just before the concert, getting the adrenaline going for the concert. Obviously, it's very important. Making myself a chimney, and I think there may be, by magic, a picture of that appearing at some point here.
Yeah, I've definitely got a picture.
I went as a chimney because obviously Santa goes down the chimney. So yeah,
it wasn't just a chimney. It wasn't just a chimney, Simon. It was a chimney with a door in the side from which your hand could go to hold the glass.
Oh, it's definitely thought through.
And you'd slicked your hair back in this white stuff. I mean, it was fierce.
I did not recognise you. It was extraordinary.
It was quite terrifying, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that as well.
The only terrifying thing for me was when I arrived at the venue, because we'd had a little warm up with the woodwind section. We all gathered, and it was lovely. And it was quite amusing because I did walk in and nobody recognised me. That was a bit odd. But when I got to the venue and saw our fabulous principal violist, David, dressed as Santa, all I'll say is, I think he won the award that night. He
really did.
Santa Claus, but I'm very glad that he didn't attempt to go down my chimney, because that could have been photos to follow, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
With warning about how terrifying Simon looks.
Thanks.
So Grace, question for you. Is it like herding kittens?
Truthfully, yes, sometimes, but very fun, cute cats. So, I don't mind doing it. And, I was just thinking about this. It must be quite odd for you guys to have, someone who's a bit bossy and, younger than you, just shouting at you to go, oh, no, don't go that way, go this way all the time. But yeah, here we are. Needs to be done sometimes.
When I spoke to you on the phone a few weeks ago, you were talking about when we were in Korea and your parents saw you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my parents definitely see me as their baby, like all parents do. I'm definitely a grown-up adult, but to them they're always the baby. And then they were absolutely shocked when they saw me working in Korea, sort of just bossing people around, going, no, the bus is coming in 10 minutes, wait there, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. And they just kind of turned around and went, oh, we didn't realize you were like bossy, like we didn't realize you actually like could do things. And I'm like, yeah, this is my job.
Grace, do you find that, as talking of grown adults and, there's a large scale from 20s up to a bit older, that the questions that come from the orchestra sometimes are just ridiculous?
Well, just
going along the sort of, do you know where the toilets are, sort of thing.
I didn't want to say that, but yeah, I mean, definitely I feel like I always need to go to the toilet first so that people where it is.
I wonder how some people actually ever go on holiday, because
yeah.
I mean, I've often wanted to ring you and say, look, Grace,
where do I go?
Yeah, come on, I don't know what to do.
But it's just that like group mentality, like when you, I'm sure, separately you all go on holidays by yourselves and completely fine, and you've got children to worry about as well when you go on holidays. But it's just when we come together as a group, we sort of just kind of, and I'm sure it's nice to kind of get rid of that responsibility, and that's why I'm here.
So in conclusion, maybe we should draw together and maybe each of us should sort of have a closing comment. I don't know. Rachel, do you want to start us off?
Oh, no, I don't particularly.
She said everything.
I think there's a real esprit de corps.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're up against it with times, and we feel grotty, and we're tired and hungry, but we'll turn up and we'll switch it on, and we'll do a great show despite everything. And I think that basically everybody is very kind to one another, and that we look out for one another because we're all out of our comfort zone. We're all away from home. We're all in places we don't know. And I think that takes a toll on anybody. With, you just think, it is more tiring than you realise, because when you stop, you realise that you've used up a lot of nervous energy because you don't know where anything is, and you can never settle anywhere. So I think, I think a good team spirit, and also a tremendous sense of humour.
Alice?
It's such an important part of the orchestra's life, and I think we're incredibly lucky to just get to go around the world playing music that we love to audiences around the world, Europe and beyond. I really miss it, and I really hope that we get to do touring again very soon, because it's so important to us as an orchestra, and also for everyone to hear our music.
Simon?
In some ways, it's come across like, this no glamour and whatever. I mean, touring is an amazing thing to do, and it's such a big part of our orchestral life. The camaraderie is, I miss it. I just miss it so much. The bus 3, we haven't even mentioned singing on.
Oh,
I mean, that's a separate Zoom meeting, honestly.
I think it probably is.
And I think maybe
Do you want to give a brief description of what goes on?
I think a CD needs to come out of that sometimes.
Yes, true.
But it's just a way. I mean, we haven't even mentioned cribbage.
Oh.
Cribbage at the back of the street. And
My beer book. I haven't mentioned that.
Beer book. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a great time. The camaraderie is absolutely through the roof. It's brilliant, and we have a great time. It isn't always easy. It's very difficult and, tiring and what have you. But it's like Alice said, I just hope ASAP that we get that schedule and get Miss Bossy Boots up there.
Grace?
Yeah, I just wanted to also add that, I think it's just such a bonding experience, like for everyone. So not just the players, obviously, and, that's very important. And, I think the orchestra gel together so much during the tour, and the performances that we get to kind of hear, even backstage, Andrew, it's just there's not something, I can't quite describe it. That's just that feeling of being part of that. But it's also really valuable experience for, the management and, staff members to get to know the orchestra.
Yeah, I can say that in general, I'm immensely proud to be part of one of the world's greatest orchestras. and it's on tour that you get to share this feeling most intensely. And there are, times in the schedule when you just feel you need a tour. Sometimes, going into work in London and doing the Blindboard and all those wonderful things that we do is marvelous. But every now and then, you just need to get together as a group and go away, and it's a wonderful feeling. Just to draw everything together, I just want to say thank you to anyone that's listening to this for joining us for this Q&A. You can find out more about the orchestra and keep in touch with us at lpo.org.uk and on social media using the hashtag LP Online. And don't forget to let us know if there are any other topics you would like us to talk about and to hear about. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.